Hello and welcome to A Righteous Cause. I'm your host, Rowan McDowell, and today we're going to be talking about the current situation involving fraud within the Somali community of Minnesota. In this video, we're going to be breaking down the history of the Somalis immigrating to the United States. We're going to be breaking down the current fraud situation that's going on right now in Minnesota. And third, we're going to be breaking down the Minnesotan government's involvement within this current situation. So the Somalis began immigrating to the United States of America back in the 1980s. This was because a violent and vicious war broke out in the country of Somalia. And because of the Refugee Act of 1980, which was passed by President Jimmy Carter, the Somalis were able to come here and seek refuge from the persecution that they were facing back in their homeland. The concept that Somalis helped build America, the concept that Somalis have been here since the very beginning, is one that is completely false. I don't remember the exact dates, but there was something that was like between the 1820s and the 1900s. There was 12 recorded Somalis in this country. And so while there were plenty of immigrants that did come to this country, such as the Irish and the Chinese and the Mexicans, that did help build this country and did a lot, the Somali group is not one of these peoples. They mainly started moving here in the 1980s to receive refuge from the persecution they were facing. The Somalis came here, and their main contributions to the United States of America involved building mosques, setting up halal grocery stores, which for people who don't know what halal means, it's essentially like their version of kosher. It's a grocery store that essentially sells things that are acceptable to eat for a practicing Muslim. They set up Quranic schools which teach the Quran, and all the money that came through those businesses were funneled back to their home country of Somalia. These, however, are legitimate businesses, unlike what we're going to be talking about next. Somalia is historically a very broken country. They have faced a lot of hardships. Currently, they still have that pirate situation that's going on out in their homelands, where a lot of these local fishermen have been ravaged by the oil industries out there. They've killed a lot of their local fish and their clean water sources. And so these people have been forced to turn to piracy in order to pay for their families and their lifestyles. The Somalis that have immigrated to our country have taken a much different approach to thievery. The Somalis that have immigrated to our country have essentially set up all these different daycares, adult daycare, child daycare centers, health care for people with special needs and whatnot, transportation services. You see in the state of Minnesota, there's what's known as non-emergency medical transportation. This would be transportation that, will take you to your dentist, your therapist, your physical therapy, your, eye doctor, right? Whatnot, that kind of stuff. And so the Somalis have opened up these businesses that do that non-medical emergency transportation services. And essentially all of these companies are just fake. It's like that dating app that you get on where there's just nothing but a bunch of bots spam texting you with a bunch of fake profiles. These businesses are basically like those dating sites. It's insane to me, and it is just so crazy that these people have been able to get away with this for so long, because it seems like this stuff isn't that hard to trace. It seems like it's very noticeable to the public. And so I'm sure you guys have seen this all over the news, if you've been watching any Fox or NBC, hell, maybe it's even on CNN. I don't know. A very popular YouTuber, Nick Shirley, made a great video on this. If you guys want to go see this stuff, the first-hand video documentation of this stuff, you should definitely check out his video. Just type in Nick Shirley, Somali fraud, and I'm sure that will bring up the video. It's all over the place. So you have all these different businesses. I think that it was totaled like over 1,000 of these different types of businesses in the state of Minnesota alone. and 800 of them plus were Somali owned. And none of these businesses are legit. Like every single one that I've seen so far, they've all just been money laundering fronts. There were cases of 14 of these businesses being at the same address. And that's just crazy to me, to think that the government was sending out checks and they just realized that they were sending out 14 different checks to the same address. That seems a little suspicious. I feel like you'd either have to be completely stupid or oblivious, horribly oblivious and terrible at doing your job, or you'd be intentionally turning a blind eye, which is what we'll get into. There was another case of 22 of these businesses being at the same address in St. Paul. The total financial damage that has been estimated to have been stolen through this fraud scheme is upwards of $18 billion, which a majority of that money has gone to the nation of Somalia, which Somalia's GDP is $12 billion in total or something like that. So this notion that, you know, these politicians on the left and involved in this Somali community keep trying to push that these Somali people were the ones that helped build America is completely false. It's actually the American taxpayers in our nation that built what is now modern Somalia. Hell, we built that country. It's unbelievable to me. It really is, how something like this could have just gone on for so long. I know that the government's been investigating this for quite some time, a lot longer than this video that's come out about it and all this news that's coming out about it right now. But it's just still insane. It really is. And so now we're going to get into Tim Walz and Ilhan Omar. So in 2008, under Tim Walz's authority, a bunch more Somalis started coming into this country. The Somali community, from what I've heard from local Minnesotans, has just absolutely overtaken Minneapolis and St. Paul and a lot of these major cities. And these people have all been connected to this grifter fraud circle that is a lot different for a government authority to trace down than, say, your conventional gangs and cartels, which has made it extremely difficult for the local law enforcement as well as the feds to control this situation. I do think that you're going to start seeing information come out that Tim Walz was directly involved in this and was even possibly taking some money from this. We could definitely put two and two together, though, and make a speculative conclusion on how having all these Somali immigrants and turning a blind eye to these fraudsters would benefit Tim Walz in the sense that it gives him a voter populace. And to me, it's so telling that Tim Walz was involved in this, because when all these allegations started coming out, and when Nick Shirley made this video, he didn't go out there and take Nick Shirley's side. He didn't go out there and take, you know, the press's side and the people's side of Minnesota. He went out there and this is what he said in response to the video that Nick Shirley made. And I quote Tim Walz on this, and I quote, This is what happens when white supremacy goes unchecked. This is a strategy that I've seen many Democratic politicians try, and politicians in general throughout my life. This is also something, too, that you've seen some of these Muslim communities that were being invested for corruption also do. You know, they went out there and they just said, oh, you're an Islamophobe. You're an Islamophobe for trying to, like, you know, like, get in on it and trying to, like, crack down on the corruption that was going on out there. Honestly, I don't think that he's going to be able to squirm and wiggle his way out of this one. To me, and how I see it, is I wouldn't want to see Tim Walz just finish his career as a governor and then move on to something else in politics, and like just all this gets brushed under the rug like it's nothing. Everyone forgets about it. And I also think it's not enough for him just to be forced out of politics. In my eyes, Tim Walz should be arrested for treason, especially if it comes out that he was directly involved with all this. So let's talk about Ilhan Omar. She is the current Congresswoman of Minnesota. Ilhan Omar was elected to Congress in 2018 and took office in 2019. She was then reelected and largely due to the fact that she has a huge voter populace within the Somali community, which she is also a part of, that she provides special benefits and protections to these people, particularly in this grifter community as well. One of those protections being when ICE started going into these democratic metropolises to start deporting illegal aliens. Ilhan Omar placed a protective order on the Somali community that made it so that ICE could not deport any of these people. I think that there is good evidence out there that she is directly connected with these grifter circles and that she has been profiting off of the fraud that has been going on. Her and her husband, who, by the way, she's like a congresswoman making very modest, should be making very modest salary. Her net worth in 2024 went up 3,000%. She had gained a total of $30 million in 1 year. That money ain't coming from Congress. Ilhan Omar has also made some extremely controversial comments as of late in defense to all this stuff that's been going on and being exposed about the Somali community of Minnesota. She has gone out there and said, and this was in reference to 9/11, that some people just did something and that caused a lot of hatred to our people, and that's like the same thing you're seeing right now. Calling 9/11 an event that changed our history and the world's history forever after that point, that's not just something. I'm sorry, that's not just something done by some people. A fellow congresswoman testified in a U.S. court of law that she heard Ilhan Omar and her associates comparing the United States of America and Israel to Al-Qaeda and the ISIS terrorist organization. This congresswoman testified in a U.S. court of law and said that she had made numerous hateful remarks about the United States of America and the American people. This woman's in Congress. She represents the state of Minnesota. She has a huge amount of power in our elections, in our decision making. I do not think that this woman should be in Congress, let alone in this country. As a matter of fact, I don't even think deporting her is enough. I think that Ilhan Omar needs to go to federal prison for the rest of her life. And so you have this group of people that were welcomed into our country to receive refuge from the persecution that they were facing. And how do they return that favor? By committing the largest fraud scandal in United States history. Maybe even the history of the world. I mean, this is how these people repaid us, dude, by setting up all these fake businesses and sitting inside of a vacant child care center, just ripping off the taxpayer based on our good intentions. This is what these people have done, is come and taken advantage of our kindness. They've taken advantage of our empathy, our sympathy towards these people. They are literally ripping us off. In some cases, and this is on the lower end. These people were making like $900,000 a year. That's on the low end. In other cases, I saw there was this one place, they were getting like $2.6 million a year. And so these people, they're making like 10 times what I make in a year. They're making like 10 times what my parents make in a year. They're making 10 times what my neighbors and all my friends make in a year, and all the people that I know, we all work to provide a service for our communities. And we pay taxes to benefit our nation, our kids, our people, our elderly, our sick. And what are these fellas, what are these Somalis going to do, man? They take that taxpayer dollars and they rip us off. Sitting around in an empty building doing nothing all day, sending this shit back to Somalia, where it's going to go and fund terrorist organizations like Al-Shabaab, who, by the way, we are enemies with. So this is not good, and this is just the tip of an iceberg. I want to be making a much more thorough and in-depth video talking about government corruption and all these different cases. There is so much. Oh my God, there's more. There's more cases of government corruption. I got dog hairs on that couch back there. There is been so much fraud and corruption and terrible. And this is obviously nothing new. Everyone knows that. But we're going to be making a video talking about some of the most notable cases of corruption in the future. This was just kind of breaking down the situation that's going on right now with the Somali community in Minnesota. I hope you enjoyed it. I think this about wraps this one up. You've been watching A Righteous Cause. I'm your host, Rome McDowell. And thank you for tuning into today's video. We'll catch you in the next one.